Hello, I'm Marshal Shore, Arizona's hip historian. Today I'm joined by the Arizona State Capitol because it was recently proclaimed online to be the ugliest state capitol in America. How did that make you feel?
It makes me feel mad and upset. I'm over 115 years old, older than the state itself, and those folks at that list took a pic of my bum and called it ugly. Though I've had some work done, I don't feel that they were correct nor very polite.
You know, Capitol, you're looking quite dapper today.
Well, thank you, hip historian. I'm a humble Capitol, nothing too fancy. I'm all about local. My foundation that keeps me standing here was carved from our own nearby landmark, Camelback Mountain. My top came from Yavapai County, and the ground level is granite from South Mountain. But I have to boast about my copper top. It was old and dinged up. The wonderful youth across Arizona saved their pennies to buy me a new shiny copper dome. Thank you.
Who's with you today?
My children, the House and Senate. See, Arizona has grown a lot over the years. Instead of moving or getting rid of me and getting something new and fancy, they were added as needed. Some call them too modern, lacking class, but they are children of their era and show how we've grown since my territorial days.
Do you like it when people come to visit?
Oh, of course. I adore visitors. We're the home by and for the people. You can even get a tour of all 4 floors and hear the stories that make Arizona's history great.
Well, hello, and good evening, everyone. I want to wish you a very wonderful, and can I even go as far to say chilly, October 29th. I mean, I actually had to wear a jacket earlier, which was kind of really nice. And so I do want to welcome all of you. I know some of you are watching on Facebook. We have some who are on YouTube as well as Twitch. So thank you all so much for being here, as we've got a really amazing show tonight, one that I think is kind of near and dear to my heart, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So again, welcome. I'm happy you are all here, taking some time out of your day as we get a chance to explore some amazing Arizona history. So tonight we have the Phoenix Trolley Museum on, so get ready for some fun with that. But I do want to say thank you, because this show would not happen without generous support from folks just like you. No amount is too small. I'm happy to say we do have a sponsor with AARP of Arizona right now, and they have a message. Now more than ever, there are critical issues on the line in this election for the 50 plus. AARP has adapted to the reality of the 2020 election year. We're working hard to make sure voters can vote safely and know their voting options. We're speaking up to candidates to remind them that 50 plus voters are watching. Until Election Day, AARP will fight to make sure voters 50 plus can make their voices heard. And in case you haven't gotten any text or phone messages or anything, this is a great time that you might want to take a moment to go vote before November 3rd. So what can you expect tonight? Well, you know, we're going to have our trivia. We have Matt, who's going to come on in just a little bit, talking about the Trolley Museum, as well as Little Arizona, and I think some cool music history, as well as a little bit of show and tell. So if this is your first time here, you might wonder, who is this? Well, my name is Marshal Shore, and I got to Arizona about 20 years ago. I was working in a library in Brooklyn, a cute little Carnegie building, actually not little at all, and decided it was time for a change because winter. I had seen too much snow and I was tired of it. So we loaded up everything we own into a big orange cube, a U-Haul. And I thought this was an appropriate image for a Halloween, just before Halloween, kind of guaranteed to be your last move, I would assume. And so when I got to Phoenix, I was actually working in a little library in South Phoenix, and there was this rich oral tradition of the community. And I quickly realized that wasn't going on in a lot of other communities. So I just started listening to people and retelling their stories. And a little over a decade ago, I actually walked away from libraries to do just what I'm doing right now, getting a chance to talk to people. And doing this because, in this moment, we are all spending a lot of time separate. And so that is really the whole reason why I even started doing this, was because I miss sharing history with folks. And the beautiful thing is that when you share, people share back with you. And so that was really the reason of starting this whole history happy hour. And I'm happy to say we are going strong. And so when we got to Phoenix, we promptly moved into a 1956 ranch. Now, when we moved in, the house was beige, 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 and more beige. I'm happy to say now it is just a simplified two-tone of seafoam and cantaloupe. And there is my buttercream yellow kitchen, all that tile with the matching in-the-well oven, the matching stovetop. That was pretty much, the house is pretty much a time capsule. And we intend on keeping it just like that. Now, when I got here to Arizona, all I heard people say was there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true, because every time I went for an adventure, either on foot, on bike, in a car, I came across amazing stories, people, and places. And so, again, that's the whole reason for doing this, is just so that we all have a little bit more awareness of what's going on in this amazing place. And then there's that post-war boom that I think in a lot of ways made the Arizona that we know and love today. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passed through on their way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving in here in huge numbers, and in many cases looking for a house just like mine. And then there's this man, Willis Carrier, who had a little invention that changed how we interact with our environment here. He created air conditioning, and how we interact with our environment, and the fact that we might not need him on a day like today, but a week ago, we're really happy that he invented that AC. Now, my name is Marshall Shore. I'm also known as a hip historian. You might wonder, how does one get a name like the hip historian? Well, back in 2012, we had a celebration for Statehood Day, February 14th, and there were things happening across the state, but they also had an amazing event down at the state capitol on Valentine's Day. And someone gave me 15 minutes to talk about anything I wanted to, and I chose to talk about an event called Mask of the Yellow Moon. It ran from 1926 to 1955. At its height, it had about 5,000 plus high school and college students performing, as well as helping put on the show. It was touted right up there with Mardi Gras as something that everybody in the country should come and see. And I was lucky enough to find 3 amazing young ladies to put on 3 dresses. These are from the late 30s that were worn in the Mask of Yellow Moon. They were designed by students and made by home economic students. Now, I do a lot of variety of tours and lectures, which pretty much have come to a screeching halt. Now, for October, we did do a series. We did 4 kind of haunted history downtown Phoenix walking tours, limited to 10 people. We were all wearing masks. And so me and my co-host Deb, we wore little microphones inside of our mask. So we were trying to be as safe and socially distanced as possible. And so we are doing another tour on November 14th, which is a Saturday. So I will explain how you can get tickets for that in just a little bit. So you might, if you're able to, there is a chat session on the right-hand side. Feel free to chat questions in there. You can also follow this event and others on Facebook, Marshall Shore Hip Historian. Follow on Instagram for Hip Historian. Or if you'd like to reach out to me after the show, good old-fashioned email is a great way, and that is hello@hiphistorian. Now, if you'd like to go to my website and see what events I have coming up, you can, that is hiphistorian.com, and that'll take you there. You can also get tickets for the tour right there as well. Now, I will ask, if you're watching this on Facebook, you'll notice a little button that says share. If you could do us all a big favor and click on that share button so that all your friends know how much fun that we're going to be having talking about Arizona. And, you know, it would not be happy hour if there wasn't a cocktail. And I am thrilled because PJ has come up with some amazing cocktails over the time. And so we are doing today a Bloody Mary. So I actually got to sample it yesterday. And so PJ knows that I love a little cocktail kit. So he indeed do put that together for me. Open. All right. So for this, we just flip the, and I kick myself off the camera. So we're not going to do that. So, all right. So you just get to watch me make a cocktail, but you don't get to watch because something went wrong with my new camera, but we'll figure that out for next time. Now with this, he's using Choco Flaco Bloody Mary mix, a hot and spicy as well as a roasted veggie, which actually were created right here in the Valley by some bartenders out in Scottsdale. And so there we have our Bloody Mary. I thought, again, kind of a little appropriate for the Halloween season. Oh, and that is oh so tasty. All right. So now we get to a show and tell moment. And so some of you already commented on the overalls, but you know, for the entire effect, you get the hat as well. So I actually got the hat so for Centennial, they also brought through the last steam train made for Union Pacific. And so it stopped at various places across the state, and it made a stop in South Phoenix at the rail yard. And so I got this at the gift shop. And so I figured, you know what, a great time to break one of my mini costumes out of the closet and bring that to you. So that was really cool, getting a chance to see that train and kind of get on it and wander through. So through the mirror, so normally I do Through the Miracle of Modern Technology, but this is obviously not modern technology. This is an old phone. So my grandfather actually retired from the railroad back. He was over in Illinois. And I remember going to visit him at work, and this was actually on the table. They had a phone just like this on the scissor. And so that's how they would communicate. And so they actually let me drive the train for a wee bit of distance. I mean, I got to press the little brass handle, and they told me I had to slow down. Nothing's really changed since then. But through the miracle of wires and copper and all kinds of things, I'm going to bring on my friend Matt. Hey, Matt. How are you?
To unmute myself.
You know, that is just the bane of 2020.
Everyone's existence right now.
Exactly. Almost every meet I'm in, someone forgets to unmute themselves. So
yes. And I said something really profound all those times I was on mute, as you know.
Of course. Probably no cuss words.
No, never.
So, Matt, what are we going to talk about today?
So I'm here to talk about the Phoenix Trolley Museum. I am a volunteer who I work in the nonprofit world. I dare say that I have worked on more than my fair share of grants, and that's how I sort of got roped into the Trolley Museum. I'm not available for hire at the moment, so I always get people asking me that, oh, can you get me free money? It's taken me a lot of years now with the Trolley Museum to finally help them. But as I'm trying to remember what I put in the trivia questions that I sent you as suggestions, Marshall.
So where is the Trolley Museum?
There is a Trolley Museum. So in 1977, a guy named Larry Fleming, who had grown up in Phoenix in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, he was a trolley buff, and he went searching for the trolleys that ran the original streetcar system that ran in Phoenix. And he found a couple of them. They were apparently some of them were, dumped in the bottom of the Salt River. There were people that were using them for their own houses. So he collected those, and then he started a museum. And if you're driving down Central, as you may know where the Ella Shackelford house is, for those who don't, next to Hance Park, you've got more people probably know the old spaghetti factory. And then there's that other old house that's there. It's that other old house. The city of Phoenix owns it, and they, in 1970s or 80s, allowed the Phoenix Trolley Museum to open up in a little outdoor, we call it a barn, but it's basically a shed that was somewhat open. It had a fence around it and a tin roof kind of thing over it. And that's where the trolleys were displayed and were rehabilitated. And after many years, the city decided it was going to redo Hance Park, and they decided that they didn't want the Trolley Museum there anymore. And the Trolley Museum had a long lease for, I think, $1 a year. And so they actually had to regroup and try to find a place to go and raise enough money to be able to have their own home, since not too many people were going to give them that offer of $1 a year. Fortunately, the place they landed is on Lower Grand Avenue. They got a really wonderful opportunity there about 3 years ago, before the market really started taking off. Grand Avenue at 11th. It's an old house on the south side of the street, or west side of the street. It's grand. And then there it is.
Indeed.
And they've spruced it up. It was probably built in the 1910s. And as you can see, well, it's not a big house. It has a lot of frontage on Grand. And over there on the right side is a big side yard where eventually the streetcars that ran in Phoenix that we still have from the 1940s and before are going to be housed out there. We just have to put a roof over them so that they will be well preserved out there. And that house was recently bought thanks to a fundraising effort from the community. That house, not very big, but it's still $150,000 was the option that the old landlord gave the Trolley Museum. They were renting it, and he said, hey, by the end of your lease, if you can come up with $150,000, the Trolley Museum was able to raise a good deal of that and able to qualify for a mortgage for the rest of it. So they will still be doing some fundraising to build that kind of new car barn on the side. And we've had some fun events there. At the Grand Avenue Festival last year, we had a classic VW show. So we had old VW buses, we had VW things, we had VW Beetles, and it's a great place to have a fun time.
Indeed, I would agree with that. So, I mean, I love the Trolley Museum. I mean, I used to, when I was on tours, I would sometimes, if we had a chance, we would stop and get a chance to either look at the trolley that they had there, or at least look at the map and just show people where the trolleys went. Because people are always amazed because they know we have trains now running through the streets of Phoenix, but they're shocked to find out how early we had trains back then. But we won't get into that now because I know we've got some information about that coming up as a trivia question.
Yes.
So we don't want to give away at all.
I thought it was like a test at school that we told everybody the answers and we wanted to see if they were paying attention.
Sometimes we do by accident, but it's all in the game of fun.
Exactly.
So indeed, so we're getting ready to launch into our trivia. Now, our trivia is not like trivia you're probably used to, where we just run through the answers and we're off and going. We actually will go through our questions. Then we'll take a little bit of a music break. And then we'll come back and talk about the answers. So that way, they're all multiple choice. So even if you don't know the answer, just take a guess. You've got one of 4 options to choose from, and one of those, at least, is correct. And you can keep track of it in the chat session if you want to do that. If you've got a pen and paper handy, you keep track of it there. The goal is that we have fun and that we get to learn some things. And I think that's definitely going to happen today.
Sounds good.
Right. Indeed it is. All right. So question 1. What was the slogan for Phoenix's original trolley? A, we get you there with care. B, ride a mile and smile the while. C, something special in the middle of the street. D, something smooth as a magic carpet. So one of those was the original slogan for the Phoenix Trolley. Which one do you think it is? All right, and that's your final answer as we go on to question 2. Which Phoenix Trolley entrepreneur was the largest taxpayer in the Arizona Territory way back in 1890? Was it A, John Alsap, who was the first mayor of Phoenix? Was it B, General Moses Sherman, the Adjutant General of the Arizona State Militia? Or C, John Freeman, Arizona Territorial Governor? Or D, N.A. Morford, owner of the Phoenix Herald newspaper? It was one of those people who was the largest taxpayer in the Arizona Territory. All right. What year did the Phoenix Trolley System experience its highest ridership? At 1.6 million passengers. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of people. All right, so was that A, 1948, B, 1936, C, 1995, or D, 1929?
That was 1895.
Oh, did I say 19? Oh, sorry.
Happens to me too.
That just means I need another. Cheers. It just means I need another sip. All right, question 4. The Phoenix Trolley ran through a neighborhood in Phoenix, which was named after a Spanish explorer. Who was that explorer? A, Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo. B, Christopher Columbus. C, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado. Or D, Sebastian Kenilworth. The trolley used to run through a neighborhood that was named for a Spanish explorer. And who was that explorer? And here we are at the halfway point. Who narrated the video played to visitors of the Trolley Museum? You didn't mention there was a video that gets played for the visitors. Oh my gosh. All right. Was it Bob Bose Bell, who is the publisher of True West magazine? B, Howard Pyle, former governor of Arizona. C, Marshal Trimble, official historian of Arizona. Or D, Jan Brewer, former governor of Arizona? Which one of those folks narrates the video that when you go to that museum, you'll get a chance to watch? All right, question 6. Where did the trolley tracks cross the Maricopa Canal? It's now abandoned. Was that canal and the trolley tracks, was it north of Van Buren Street? A, B, south of Thomas Road. C, south of Indian School Road. Or D, north of Encanto Blvd.
I hope I can remember these answers. I think I gave them to you.
You did. So
Okay.
yeah, so we're not going to give them away yet. I mean, we got a few minutes for that, but then we'll go down that path. All right. So question 7. What was the first year a trolley ran in Phoenix? Was it A, 1866, B, 1887, C, 1895, or D, 1906? What year did a trolley first run in Phoenix? And those are all pretty old dates. All right. On what line did the trolley reach all the way to Glendale? Oh my gosh. I could have gotten from downtown to Glendale on a trolley?
Yes.
All right. So was that A, the Kenilworth line, B, the Orangewood line, C, the Capitol line, or D, the Indian School line? I like how Jason's putting a question mark after a bunch of his over in the chat. So don't worry, Jason. By the time we leave, you'll know the answer. All right. And coming into the home stretch. So question 9. Where was the main power source for the trolley system? Was it A, Maryland and 3rd Street, B, Pierce and 10th Street,
or Pearson !0?
I know. I was reading that going, oops, wait a minute.
I'm sure you copied and pasted from whatever I sent you. So
I did. And then I also changed some of it, but I'm like, oh, I guess I missed one. I guess too many Bloody Marys in preparation.
Yes.
So, or C, Van Buren and 9th Street, or D, Madison and 7th Street. Where was the main power source for the trolley located? Question 10. What was the previous name for Roosevelt Street? Because, a lot of our streets had different names, and then they changed them. So Roosevelt used to be called, was it A, Christie Road, B, Baltimore Street, C, Division Street, or D, Cave Creek Road? Which one of those was the former Roosevelt? Oh, and of course, my cocktail consultant pops on and says, there's no such thing as too many Bloody Marys. All right. And then we have one bonus question to help people bump up their scores a little bit. Who was the most infamous writer on the Brill Street line? A, Rose Mofford, B, Winnie Ruth Judd, C, Dot Wilkinson, or D, Eva Dugan? Who was the most infamous writer on the Brill Street line? All right. So while you're gathering your answers and everything, before we move on with the answers, we've got a little bit of Arizona music history. So when I was trying to find something train related, I happened to stumble across a group called the Phoenix Trolley. Now, they did a few songs back in the late 60s, but sadly, I can find no connection to them and Phoenix nor the trolley. They seem to be really big in the UK. I even reached out to Johnny D, who had never heard of them and had no connection, and he even worked at Capitol Records at one point. So, if anyone out there has an idea of why this group that seems to be American and call themselves the Phoenix Trolley, I have a feeling there's got to be a story there. And the fun part will be once it finally comes to light, or they just picked it out of a hat and there you go. So we're getting a chance to talk about is the Grand Canyon Rail, because the Grand Canyon Rail is a heritage rail. It carries passengers. They all leave from Williams. You actually get an opportunity to either stay or at least buy your ticket in the old Harvey House. And then you get a chance to get on the train that was completed. The tracks were completed in 1901. It was built by the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Rail. It is 64 miles long, and you get to go on an adventure. And they are running even now. You can see people are masked, and they have roving troubadours to entertain you, as well as a fake robbery. And so it's a lot of fun. If you've never had a chance to do it, I would say go do it. I mean, the rail is now historic, listed on the historic register of historic places. The rail shut down in 1968 for passengers. It was then ended for freight in the early 1970s. But then private folks bought it in 1988. And the next year they opened it up as a private rail that does all kinds of fun events. I mean, look, you get to go ride in a domed car, which is pretty impressive. I mean, there's all kinds of options. And they also do the Polar Express. And so I've had friends who have taken their kids, and their kids come back hoarse because they've been yelling so much. So you might want to take earplugs with you when you go, but you can expect a lot of fun, some beautiful scenery, and just an opportunity to experience what old train travel was like. All right. So who's ready for some answers?
Woo!
I know. All right. So our first question, what was the slogan for the Phoenix original trolley?
You found it. Ride a mile and smile the while. Also the name of the book published by the founder of the Phoenix Trolley Museum, Larry Fleming. And the publisher on it, I think, was actually the person, Mike Swain, who is a board member with the Trolley Museum, who came up with these questions. So this book was something I was able to find on Amazon. We call it the Bible of our Trolley Museum, trolley history in Phoenix. And it has probably a bunch of the photos that Marshall's going to show you. And it'd be great if we could do a reprint, and maybe one day if things take off, maybe we will. Maybe we'll have a second edition with the new history.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, because you're on Grand, where there used to be trolley tracks right out there.
So that's another thing that I sometimes talk to people about, the Grand Avenue Rail Project. We've heard from a number of people who have seen streets being torn up and resurfaced and said, there are rails underneath certain streets. And in fact, if you go to Gallo Blanco over in the Garfield neighborhood at, I want to say that's 10th Street and Pierce or so, notice that there are cracks down the middle of the street on Pierce, and those cracks then turn and go up 10th Street. And the reason is because underneath there are still the tracks from the Phoenix streetcar. And when they were laid, they were not laid in cement in that area. They were laid in dirt. So as the tracks continue to settle in the dirt, it is pulling down the blacktop there, and you're seeing cracks in there. So we don't know for certain, but there may very well be tracks underneath Grand Avenue still. And
I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I know when I was working on Central, when they were putting light rail in, they kept they would dig down and find the old tracks, and they had to then get rid of those.
Yeah.
So
I think that's how we do have some of the original tracks at the Trolley Museum. And I think that might be how they got there. I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
So one of the cars that we have that actually ran in Phoenix, car 116, one time was in condition at the old Trolley Museum on Central. They had, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred feet of track, and they ran it back and forth between the shed and the street for school groups. So it probably wouldn't take a whole lot for that car to get back up and running. And, wouldn't that be awesome? I know Grand has become a popular place on First Friday. So, at the very least for First Friday or events, if not, other times too, as Grand Avenue.
It's like, people go to San Francisco and it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to ride a streetcar. I think it would have that same kind of cachet, especially as Grand keeps developing and getting more and more cooler.
Yeah, I totally agreed. And, they already have buses on First Friday, so why not have an actual streetcar?
Right, exactly. Cheers to that.
Yes. Amen. Salud.
All right. Question 2. Which Phoenix Trolley entrepreneur was the largest taxpayer in the Arizona Territory? General Moses Sherman.
Yep. So he has an interesting story. He was born, I think, in Vermont. He became a teacher. He was in upstate New York. He was in Wisconsin, and he moved to Prescott as a relatively young man. And he was actually named he had a whole lot of different titles. He was the first superintendent of public instruction in the Arizona Territory. He was the Adjutant General of the State Militia. Sounds like a scary organization, maybe, or maybe not. And it might have just been him. At some point, he made his way down to Phoenix and started buying up land here. And he started the streetcar system in Phoenix. And, it was almost in business, they use the term loss leader. It's a thing that you lose money on to try to make money on something else and get people in the door. And he bought up land and built trolleys so that people could commute into the city. It's important to remember that the first suburbs were not automobile suburbs, that we actually had streetcar suburbs before that, a la Mr. Rogers and his neighborhood. And so people would get on the streetcar and go into downtown, which was pretty much where all the offices and all the commerce, the retail was. And they would go there to work, to shop, to go to church, to whatever, go see friends across town. And so Moses Sherman sold a lot of land next to his streetcar lines, and he donated the land for the Arizona State Capitol, or the territorial capital at that time. And once he made his money, he moved over to California, and I think he more or less left the streetcar system to the city of Phoenix. And you might have heard of a neighborhood in California, Sherman Oaks, which is named after him. And he also started one of the streetcar systems that became integrated into the Pacific Electric Railway, which was probably the most extensive streetcar system in the United States, if not the world. And it's hard to believe that Los Angeles, once upon a time, was a city built around mass transit. And then it became built around freeways. And now they've sort of started saying, oh, we need to go back to mass transit again. So interesting history of Moses Sherman.
Well, and I think it's interesting when you talk about those early trolleys basically being built as transit-oriented development.
Yes.
And so now we're right back there again with the new train, and that's starting to spark now development in new areas because now there's a train stop there.
We are. And the Trolley Museum was awarded a grant by the Arizona Humanities Council to do an oral history project of a few people that we've found that remember riding on the original streetcars, which ended in, as one of our questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I gave that away. These are not young people. And unfortunately, we're on hold because most of them are in nursing homes, and they were very, very young people. But it'll be important to hear their stories. And so that's something that we want to, we also want to, bring in that version of what was it like, and kind of use that to say, hey, how can we look at history and use it to guide us as we move back to transit-oriented development?
Right. I mean, I think it's funny that we've kind of gone that full circle.
Yeah.
All right. Question 3. What year did the Phoenix Trolley System experience its highest ridership at 1.6 million passengers? There weren't that many people in Phoenix at that time.
Yeah. I guess you figure out for every person in Phoenix sure rode an awful lot of times.
Indeed. Yeah, there would have been probably about just over 30,000 at that point.
Yeah. So 1929, that was obviously the year that the I almost said the Great Recession, the Great Depression began. And, the automobile industry was really taking off, and that led to obviously people having automobiles and not needing the trolley as much, but also led to more congestion on the streets. And remember, the trolleys, unlike the Phoenix light rail system that we have today, which has its own dedicated right-of-way, these ran in the streets. And so sometimes they did collide with cars. as Tempe's building their new streetcar system, which you may see those rail lines there if you're driving around ASU, and you're thinking, well, how's that different than light rail? Well, one of the ways it is different is that just like these old trolleys, Tempe's streetcar is also going to ride down the street. So be careful when you see it out there and don't collide with it. But the Great Depression, probably because it caused such economic fallout and fewer people being able to drive or afford to drive, I think that bought a few extra years for the trolley system. And then in World War II, of course, we had rationing of everything from gasoline to rubber. And so I think that led to people continuing to ride the trolleys. But, anyway, I'm probably giving away some additional answers here.
If people are listening. But
yes.
All right. So question 4. The Phoenix Trolley ran through a neighborhood in Phoenix, which was named for a Spanish explorer. And that was
Coronado.
Coronado, indeed.
So that is where one of the streetcar lines went up. It went up, I almost think it was 11th Street, not 12th Street, although 12th is kind of the main thoroughfare in the neighborhood. But a few years ago, we did a tour we got some school buses that we rented, and for a small donation, we took people on a tour of the actual neighborhoods where the streetcars ran, and that is one of them.
Very cool.
Maybe it passed over a canal. I don't know.
Oh, that's true. All right. So who narrated the video that plays for visitors when they visit the museum?
Yeah. Howard Pyle, who was a governor of Arizona in the early 1950s. And I think he may have been in radio as well, or broadcasting. I know that Jack Williams was a later governor, but Howard Pyle did in whatever year it was, before he died, he did narrate a video that we have of the Trolley Museum. We have some footage of the last day that it rode in the year that we're going to find out, and so it's a little interesting piece of Arizona history. Indeed.
All right. So where do the trolley tracks across the Maricopa Canal? Just south of Indian School.
Yeah. I don't know anything about the Maricopa Canal other than it does appear on the maps of the streetcar system. And Marshall, you've got our map up there, so I can actually talk about where the lines went. I think that's one of the questions. So Jefferson and Washington, where our light rail system runs now, that was one of the main lines that ran on the west out to the state capitol and maybe even a little bit beyond. And on the east side, I think at one point it ended at East Lake Park at 16th Street. And then I think at another time it did continue on to the state hospital at 24th Street. You see the line up Grand Avenue. And then there was a line that went up into what's now the Willow neighborhood on 5th Avenue. There was a line that went up into the Coronado neighborhood, as we talked about. There was a line that went up not Central, but 3rd Street. And that's an infamous one coming up in another question. And that connected, as you'll see right by the Indian School, to that big loop up top, which took you out to Glendale. Now, that one was never very profitable to go out to Glendale, but you got to go through a lot of orange groves and citrus groves, and I'm sure it would have smelled really, really nice in March, and probably would have taken you a long time, but if you didn't have a car, it sure beat walking.
And I wonder if, looking back, maybe that's why Glendale chose to opt out of light rail, because they said if it wasn't cost effective back then. What's changed?
Could be, or some of the politics, but
no, there's always politics.
Never.
All right. What was the first year a trolley ran in Phoenix?
Yeah. 1887. They were originally pulled by, I think it was horses or mules. and they went electric actually soon thereafter. I want to say it was about 1893. I don't remember if that. Hopefully, that wasn't one of the questions, but we'll find out if so. We'll find out if I was right. Around 1893, I think they started electrifying them and went fully electric pretty soon thereafter.
All right. So, what line went all the way out to Glendale, Arizona?
So that orange line on there was the Orangewood line that went through the orange groves. Orangewood is the name of a street, but it actually, I know it went down Myrtle. It went down several other streets as it came into Glendale, but it went across to all the way to 12th Street. So it was a kind of a circuitous route. It didn't run straight down Grand. It took people from across just north of Glendale Avenue and then came down 12th Street. And then at Indian School, it headed back west and ran down the 3rd Street line to into downtown.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So it really would have taken you a long time.
It would have taken you a long time, but you could have stopped and had an orange while you were waiting. Well,
exactly.
It probably was close enough for you. Literally could have reached out the trolley and grabbed an orange.
I imagine.
And where was the main power source for the trolley system located after the horses? Because I mean, they had cables somewhere.
Bags. I do not know much about this. I know that that was around the area where the they must have had some property over there, and I don't know if any of our docents are real docents other than me. I've done it a few times on First Friday, but people have had their Bloody Marys by that point. So I don't know if our real docents might know, but I know that they must have had some land over there because the car barn was also over there. And the end of the Trolley Museum, I can talk about that in a little bit, but there was a fire at the car barn, which was located over there, that destroyed a lot of the rolling stock, as we call it.
So so this would have been after the horses and when everything was electric, just kind of like the cars are now, having to have power lines above them so that way they could get power and continue. Yeah.
It was an electrical system. I don't totally know. My grandfather wrote his memoirs. He sat down and hand wrote out 19 pages of what he remembered about growing up in the 1920s in Niagara Falls, New York. And I know when they got to the end of the line, they had to switch the where the trolley connected to the top of the electric lines. And my grandfather and his friends, being the rebels that they were, after the trolley man would do that, and he'd go in and, he had to reverse the seats also. So they were facing forward, and they would switch the line so that when he went to start it up, it would try to go backwards again. So there are probably a lot of people who have those trolley memories because some other cities had them. A lot of cities, they stopped much earlier than Phoenix, but some cities, they, went later. And then you still got places like New Orleans where they still run, and the cable cars in San Francisco.
Right. Now, hopefully you guys have reached out to First Flames Arizona, because that crowd is great for having all kinds of stories that have been passed down through family about just kind of Phoenix, what it was like back in the day.
Yeah.
And they're doing some great Zoom programs lately. So maybe I don't know if you guys have talked about maybe even doing a Zoom program on the Trolley Museum just to see what stories the audience will then come back with.
I know that we have some people who've worked with, we've found some of those trolley riders through a variety of venues that Gail Fleming, who's the widow of Larry Fleming, the founder of the Trolley Museum, does a lot of the speaking engagements, and she found quite a few of the folks. We actually ended up finding about 40 people or so that we know of, who some of them were very, very young, but we found some people who, have those memories. So that might have been one of the sources.
Not very good. I hope so. All right. So I see Murph wants us to run back. So Murph, question 7 was B, 1887. Question 8 was the Orangewood line, B. that went all the way to Glendale. All right, and here we are at our last question, sort of. What was the previous name of the for Roosevelt?
Yeah, apparently Baltimore Street shows up on the maps. But when you think about it, our first president, Roosevelt, was not president until 1901, when the Phoenix Trolley Museum was already running. So it's not surprising that some of those early maps would not show that as Roosevelt Street. And also First Families. Thank you, Jason O'Neill. I see that in the comments. Thank you for that. We have worked with First Families, Arizona. They gave us a letter of support for the grant that I wrote for our oral history project. So hopefully they have some stories too that we can, folks that we can get when we get that underway.
Oh, but then Gloria says she has a cool family story about the trolleys. So
well.
Indeed. See, look at that. I mean, I would not be shocked. I was like, sweet. I knew there'd be some stuff coming up from here.
And you can always find me on Facebook or my email. I didn't really give out, but mjewett, my name's down there, mjewett76@gmail.com.
All right. And then we do have one bonus question, which is, who was most infamous rider on the Brill Street line? And that would be B. Winnie Ruth Judd.
Yeah. So the last play that I went to, the last theater performance I went to was that weekend. It would have been, I guess, March 14th at the Phoenix Theater was having their a festival that they have in the late winter, early spring with their local works. And they have a play about the life of Winnie Ruth Judd, who is the famous trunk murderess. If you are ever at, just north of Thomas, so I think that one is Catalina, that street at 2nd Street.
Right.
So kind of go out across Park Central Mall, if I can still call it that. And there's an apartment building that they tore down a bunch of old houses. And the one that they left is the one where the deed was done, where the murder took place. And Winnie Ruth Judd had lived there with them. I don't believe she was living there at the time, but
she wasn't. She had an apartment further down on Brill Street.
Okay. And so she took, she took the streetcar that was actually in the play. She took the streetcar down, and they have some streetcar sounds, I think, in the background. So she was kind of one of the famous riders. Although I would imagine some of the other people that we had on there, like Rose Mofford, our former governor, probably took it as well.
Right. I mean, that's why I was trying to mix up a little bit. So people who had actually probably taken the trolley, but not necessarily have been quite as infamous.
Yeah. So we have a question about the demise of the trolley system. And I don't recall, was there a question about the year that
we actually didn't have a question about that? And so I was going to bring that up as well, is because, I mean, that's when I travel. One of the things I love to do is go to like the Transit Museum and kind of hear the stories and things like that. So
so the year that it ended in 1947, things as we were getting in after the war, and the economy was starting to take off again, and we no longer had the Depression or the war. People were driving, and on top of that, I know General Motors was mentioned there. I've never seen it, but I know that there is a movie. It's on my watch list for the last 10 years, where a documentary where GM actually did buy up. I think they bought up the Pacific Electric Railway in were one of the owners towards the end, and over in California. So there are people who think that GM was trying to run the streetcars out of business. Now, they were already declining at that point anyway. GM probably did make buses, but also, they wanted people to have their own cars. So there was a fire in 1947, and at the car barn where they kept the streetcars, and a whole lot of them were destroyed. And it was just very difficult for the streetcar lines to recover after that. Some of the lines stopped right after, some had already stopped. And in 1948 was the last run of the streetcar system in Phoenix until light rail in 2008.
And then we had buses.
We had buses, and I remember the ones with was a logo with a smiling sun on the side of the bus when I was a kid. And I know there was a name for that logo, but I don't recall it. But one of the great things that happened, so the Phoenix Trolley Museum has two cars, 116 that I mentioned, which had been actually in working condition not that long ago. And then I think it's 504, the one that is, it's basically just a shell. But then we had another one recently. It was funny because it was as we were raising money to buy the building for the new Trolley Museum home. Yeah, so this is the new car. We had somebody in Mesa who had this on a lot where they were, it was some industry, I don't know exactly what. And, you have people who, I always think of like construction sites, they have a trailer out there, right? So at some point, somebody was using this at their industrial site, and this one actually bears some scars on it of the fire, I believe. I haven't been down to see it. We've had it there about a month and a half or so, but we actually have this one down at the Trolley Museum. It had some work done to it, to the exterior, so that it didn't exactly look as it looked when it ran, but it is an original streetcar that ran in the city of Phoenix.
Wow, very cool. I love how history keeps percolating up to the surface again.
Yeah.
I mean, like the road rails being buried, this trolley pops up.
And it's amazing how many people out there have artifacts that somebody might be looking for and they didn't even know existed. We didn't know about that being out there.
Very cool. And then Preston asks, did we still have a trolley on Central in the 80s?
Not anything I remember, unless it was indeed where the Trolley Museum was, where they had car 116 that ran kind of back and forth from Central Avenue. Just
right, that's what I was thinking.
There was a proposal, and then of course there's the trolley in the old spaghetti factory. I don't know about the history of that, but I do know in the 1980s, there was a proposal. Actually, for many years, there were proposals to put high-speed mass transit up and down Central Avenue. At one time, there was a proposal for an elevated monorail. And Terry Goddard, when he was mayor, had Valtrans that went to the ballot, I want to say around 1989. And I live in the Pasadena neighborhood, which is just northwest of 7th Avenue and Camelback. And our neighborhood association president, I found out we had historical files. And so I went and picked them up from her. And now I have them in the junk room in the back of my house. I have many boxes that I've looked through. And, it's interesting because in our neighborhood, we were busy fighting the freeways at the time that the Valtrans proposal was on the ballot. And, for us, this once upon a time, north of Camelback was North Phoenix. And the Paradise Parkway that was on the books between 1960 until the 1990s really did kind of do a number on this neighborhood, because ADOT started buying up houses. And I know, Marshall, you came to one of our, I wasn't able to make it, but you did come to one of our neighborhood association meetings to talk about it. And we, ADOT, we had some people in the neighborhood who were there still here in the 90s. And ADOT wasn't a very good landlord. It's just not what they do. So they bought up houses that were in the way and were waiting until they had funding to put the freeway there. And we had a lot of blight. And when finally the Paradise Parkway was canceled, Governor Symington signed the bill eliminating the Paradise Parkway from the books. He did it on the front lawn of a house over here in the neighborhood. So little tangent, but it shows you get a choice between those things. And we've had a lot of people who've fought for freeways, and a lot of people who fought against them, and mass
And
transit.
light rail. I mean, people have been fighting for and against, and so it's like a pendulum.
Yeah,
going back and forth.
Yeah, and it's interesting because 1985 was the year that the voters in Phoenix went to the ballot to approve the first dedicated funding for our freeway system. And that was the same year, I believe, that the voters over in LA said, we can't pave our way out of this, obviously. And so they actually went back to the ballot and passed funding to bring back some of their mass transit. And some of them ride on the same corridors that their old Pacific Electric Railway did. Just like here in Phoenix, we have some of the same routes on Valley Metro today that the Phoenix streetcar system used.
Right. I mean, some of those major thoroughfares are still major thoroughfares. So
yeah.
All right. So how did everyone do? I know Murph was like, oh, I got 4 out of 11. But hopefully, Murph, if you were to take that one again, you'd get a better score this time. I mean, that's all the fun of this, is not how much you know coming in, but how much you retain when you walk out. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Matt, I want to say thank you and give you a huge round of applause for sharing Phoenix trolley history.
Thank you. And, if it weren't for you, some of these stories wouldn't be getting told and passed on. We really do have the risk of the stories dying if we don't continue to tell those bits of history.
I mean, it's like we love to knock things down and rebuild. And so we've got to keep those stories alive to help people realize what an amazing place this is and how many people have gone through here and done some really cool things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it tells the story of what life was like. And who knows the memories of when you talk about the streetcar, what other memories that will spark of going downtown to shop and of really having that one common center of town for everybody.
Exactly. Well, Matt, thank you so much and have a great rest of your night, and happy Halloween to you, whatever you choose to do, whether you sit at home.
I'll be sitting in my front yard, and I will have a table with candy on it a few feet further beyond at the end of my driveway.
Good idea. All right. Well, enjoy and have a great rest of your night.
You do the same. And I see Gloria also. We'll be in touch.
Very good.
Okay. Thanks, Marshall.
Thank you, Matt. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. I always love this because you never know quite where the stories are going to go and all the cool stuff that will come out. And that's one of the joys of doing this. So now it's time for Little Arizona. So Little Arizona is sponsored by the First Families of Arizona. You can find out more information about them. I know we talked about them earlier, but you can also track them down on Facebook under First Families of Arizona, as well as their website, which is just the initials, so tffoa.org. And you can find out more about First Families of Arizona. Now, why do Little Arizona? So I grew up in a little tiny town in Indiana of about 25 people. 2 roads, 1 stop sign. And so I have an affinity, I think, in some ways for those small town kind of characters, that flavor. And that, I think, is one of the beauties of Arizona, is not only do we have the 5th largest city in the country, but we also have all these little towns that dot Arizona that have such a unique flavor, and in some cases don't really change as much as some of the larger cities do. So today we're going to talk about a little town called Lowell, Arizona. Now, if you've ever been to Bisbee, you may have been to Lowell. It's actually, and so trying to tie also kind of the story of the town actually into the theme, since we're talking about train travel. So Bisbee had a line that ran from Bisbee to Warren. And it was really because of the miners. And so Warren was really kind of the further town. And so once they put the smelter in, people didn't necessarily want to live next to a smelter. You had a lot of the miners had to live within the walking distance of the mine until the trolley went in and they could actually get to work on the trolley. And so in between Bisbee and Warren, although it's now kind of all kind of one like Bisbee metropolitan megaplex, And they had a trolley that went from Bisbee to Warren. And there was a little town called Lowell. And so Lowell was a little thriving town. And you then have the pit mine. When the lavender mine started going in, it actually started taking up the town. And so what once was a thriving town, those houses were being demolished and becoming part of the mine. And so today there's really pretty much one street left, and that would be Erie Street. And so you can see here, and actually let's make that a little bit bigger so you can see a little bit better. And so you can see Lowell, there really is one shopping street left. There are a few businesses along there. I mean, you can no longer go see a movie, but you can get your Harley fixed if you're so inclined. As well as even one of the things I love about visiting small Arizona towns is Sprouse Ritz. You'll see these iconic red tile buildings all over. And that was like a 5 and dime store. And so I've seen them in Superior. I think the one in Superior actually has been painted over, but you can see where the paint is peeling off. And so that iconic red tile always lets you know that's what was there. And they were all over Arizona. And then if you're in Bisbee and you're looking for a place to have breakfast, you can go to the Bisbee Breakfast Club, which is in Lowell. And now to get to Bisbee, or to get from Bisbee to Lowell, you just go out to the main street, hang a left, and pretty much make your first right, and you're there in Lowell. So I want to remind you, if you have any questions, stories, or suggestions for your future episodes, we are currently going through the end of December. I'm actually working on something that could be really cool for December 31st, for New Year's, to actually give us all something kind of fun and quirky to do. But more information as that progresses, or we'll find something else fun to do without any doubt. So next week we are talking to my friend Stephanie with the Fabric Foundation. And so they are a group that really on a dime became, with the middle of in early days in COVID, started working with some groups to start producing PPE gowns for hospitals, because suddenly the supply chain of those were cut off. And so Fabric Foundation was instrumental in having that happen, as well as looking at, I think, some really kind of future technology stuff, which I think will be really exciting. So that's going to be a really fun show as well. Now, also remember on November Saturday, on the 14th, Deb and I will be doing haunted Phoenix history tours. Actually, not tours, just one. And so you can find that on my website, which is hiphistorian.com, as well as other events like this. Also working with the city of Phoenix, and we are doing a storytelling series of trying to capture LGBTQ voices. So again, I want to say thank you to all of you out there listening and watching. I do want to say this program happens because of you. And no matter how small a donation, any amount is appreciated. I am happy to say we also have a sponsorship from AARP Arizona, and they have a message that is now more than ever. There are critical issues on the line in this election for the 50 plus. AARP has adapted to the reality of the 2020 election year. We're working hard to make sure voters can vote safely and know their voting options. We're speaking to candidates to remind them that the 50 plus voters are watching. Until Election Day, AARP will fight to make sure voters 50 plus can make their voices heard. And so please make your voices heard. Now, I always give a shout out to the folks that help put this together. So we have my friend Cole and Chris, who helped put that video together at the very beginning with the music. Cole wrote that music. Chris did the video. I always want to give a shout out to PJ Vader Barron, my amazing cocktail advisor, who I think is going to have a lot of fun in the coming months. Some of those topics coming up, as well as the outro, which you're about to see, which is found film footage from Arizona, mainly in the 50s, as well as music written by a hometown boy, Mr. Ho or Brian O'Neill. So everyone, have a safe Halloween. Have a great weekend, and I will see you here next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, as we get ready to have some more fun. So thank you all so much for being out there, and have a great rest of your night.